It's July of 2023. I wanted to play two games, Just Dance 2017 and Far Cry 3. Both of these I had purchased years ago on Steam, and I was of the belief that I can access them whenever I wanted to. Do you know what these two titles have in common? That's right, Ubisoft. Judging by the groan you just made, you might have an idea of where this is going. Apparently, to play these games, it wasn't enough to have them on Steam. I also needed to access my Ubisoft account. This is a very brief summary of the nightmare of events that followed. When I pressed play, I was prompted to log into my Ubisoft Connect account. I didn't remember my password, so I reset it. Easy peasy so far. But when I tried to log in, I got hit with an error. There was a problem authenticating the ownership of the product. Okay, so maybe I bought these games using a different account, but no, I'm sure I just had the one. So I reached out to their support and got in touch with a senior support agent named UbiBean. They basically explained that this error is a result of me being logged in under a different account than the one the games were purchased with. They kindly offered to double check for me, so I give them a list of all of my emails. They also want me to send over a Steam purchase receipt to verify ownership. I said that part twice because it's going to be very important later. They eventually got back to me with some news. To my surprise, I actually bought these games using an Ubisoft account tied to Yahoo Mail. Okay, that one's on me. I haven't touched that email in years. So long, in fact, that Yahoo deleted that email. So, I have two Ubisoft accounts with different games on each, but I was no longer able to log in to one of them. I asked if it'd be possible to transfer these old games into my main account, and it is, with the exception of any saves, progress, in-game items, or purchases. Okay, fine, that's whatever. At least finally, I'll get to play soon. Next, I have to get proof of purchase for Just Dance from Steam. Easy. And now for Far Cry, a CD key. The problem with that is, I bought the game on Steam. UbiBean provided instructions on how to find the CD key, but I told them that there's nothing there because I bought the game on Steam. I also didn't get enough proof of ownership for Just Dance, so I had to do that again. Alright, whatever. I sent those messages over, and their response was, in order for us to further proceed, we are still missing proof of purchases for the game Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. Please kindly provide it for us so we can validate. UbiBean, I already told you that. Oh my god. It was at this point that I realized UbiBean was nowhere to be found. Every single response email I got after the first one was a different Ubi. Ubi Loki, Ubi Mr. Tambourine, Ubi Camby, Ubi Kieran, Ubi Lumos, Ubi Vincenzo, Ubi Kieran again, Ubi Thor. What is going on here? Why does it take multiple different people to handle this issue? So, after getting used like a hot potato, I tried to send over whatever proof I could think of tying my account to these games, and it's still not enough. As the image shows as valid, I need the screenshots taken for your CD key. Here are the instructions on how to locate the CD key. The same instructions I was already sent. The same instructions where I found nothing because I did not buy the game in CD form. I once again politely explained that, but unfortunately, without verifying game keys, we won't be able to proceed further. To locate a game key, it is now 2026, and I have yet to play either of these games. And I fear I will never dance again.
What? You come here for the experience. This is like, you know, my father went to Woodstock. This is our Woodstock of a generation.
We have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right now, I think it is more important than ever to actually own what you pay for.
We are the customer. We should not be required in any capacity to jump through hoops.
When we say a game has been destroyed, what we mean is a publisher has permanently disabled all copies of it that have been sold so no one can ever play them again.
So much of our life now is spent interacting with the digital world. This video that you're watching is an example. Games, TV, movies, more media than we could ever consume in our lifetime is all within our reach. The convenience of it makes it easier for us to seemingly accept that we don't really own that much anymore. At the very least, not physically. Take video game consoles, for instance. Both Xbox and PlayStation have unveiled digital-only versions of their systems. No more worrying about game discs here, and they're also a bit cheaper. You want to save money, right? Well, if you have a Switch 2, certain games will cost less if you buy them digitally. It really does seem like these companies really want you to let them make your life easier by letting them handle your gaming catalog. They care about that so much that back in early 2024, Microsoft laid off departments that focused on getting physical games into retail stores. And don't even get me started on the death of video game shops. By the way, if you're enjoying this, please do consider subscribing. It really helps out a ton. Thanks. A week after the new Tamagotchi Life game came out, I was convinced to buy it, but I wanted to have a physical copy. So I looked into where I can get one that same day. That's when I found out that a huge chunk of the GameStops I was familiar with were now permanently closed. This shouldn't have been as much of a surprise to me, considering that this franchise stopped focusing on selling games long ago. You guys remember how hype midnight releases used to be? I was there for the tail end of that era, but that was nice. Anyway, these closures meant I now had to go elsewhere. I live in Chicago. There's a lot of people here, and thus, a lot of stores. However, I could not find one single place within a reasonable distance that had Tamagotchi Life in stock. A game that's already been out for a week. But you want to know what they had plenty of? These cards that had a code for a digital download. At that point, I would rather just buy it on the Nintendo eShop. Thankfully, someone who I was already going to link up with who lived further away was able to check their local Target for me to get a physical copy. I genuinely thought that if I wanted to play it soon, I was just gonna have to download it. The reason I insisted on having this little cartridge in my possession was because of some worrying things I've been seeing regarding digital games. You don't really own them. That may be confusing considering that when you go to procure a digital game, the checkout menu uses language like purchase, and if you try to buy something again, there's text that says, you already own this game. You see, dear viewer, according to the digital store's terms of service, what you are actually buying is a license to play the game. This comes with a few other fine print limitations. For example, PlayStation's rules basically say that you are not allowed to broadcast games. This technically means that I would not be able to open up the official PlayStation Twitch app that would let me stream directly to twitch.tv/Lias. Live every Monday and Friday, by the way. If I did that, John Sony could technically come after me. There's also this part here that basically says you can't share your games with others at all. Interesting when you consider how years ago, PlayStation would take shots at Xbox trying to crack down on game sharing.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
PlayStation.
This has actually been something brought up as of late to highlight hypocrisy. because at the time when I was working on this video, Sony was in hot water for a change they tried to subtly make. Again, as it stands, your digital games don't technically belong to you. You purchase a license to play that game on the digital library on the platform you bought it from. This is nothing new, and it was already common practice way back with early gaming as a piracy countermeasure. The game disc or cartridge is a license to play the game on approved hardware. At no point do you actually own the software inside of it. In today's world, companies try to combat piracy with digital rights management, or DRM software, embedded into the digital games they're trying to protect. This has caused many issues as this very software interferes with the experience of paying PC customers. Game crashes and performance hits are all too common. And in some cases, because the pirated game is cracked and doesn't have to deal with DRM, it actually runs better than the paid version. With these pieces of software, they also sometimes require you to be online, even if the game is single player. So if there's an internet outage and you want to... That is just an example of what you can't do when there's no internet. Progressing on your single player Hitman playthrough should not be one of those examples. So knowing all of this, it makes sense why tensions flared in late April of 2026 when people started to notice something different on a purchased title's information screen, a 30-day validation period. Since this was dropped without any notice, it was taken as Sony adding even more limitations to people's digital libraries. It was thought that this change made it so that an internet connection was required at least once every 30 days to confirm the license of a game, even if the console was set to be the primary. If the countdown made it to the end with no internet confirmation, the game would essentially be locked until it was able to connect to the internet, and thus, the countdown begins again. Gamers obviously did not take this well. The community was abuzz over these changes. It was a ridiculous anti-consumer move. How is this even legal? In 2011, the PlayStation Network suffered an almost month-long shutdown over a massive data breach. What if something like that happened again? People wouldn't be able to connect and play their games through no fault of their own, even if the people who own these consoles are mostly in an internet-connected world. There are instances where that's not always the case. And on top of that, it was just the principle of the thing. You paid for this game, and thus you should be able to access it whenever you want. It wasn't until days later that we would finally hear something from Sony. Fortunately, as it turns out, this whole thing was just a quiet change to combat refund scams. With this new system, a purchase is made, a temporary license is given. After the refund window expires, that license is switched over from a temporary to a perpetual one. According to Sony, a one-time online check is required to confirm the game's license, after which no further check-ins are required. Alright, well, this wasn't that bad of a change then, as it wouldn't have negatively affected the vast majority of players. But nonetheless, all of this heated speculation and the days of worrying over an uncertain, unprecedented future was caused by a severe lack of transparency from Sony. Even though they did clear the air, I'm sure the days they kept people in the dark like this won't soon be forgotten and will be a black mark on their reputation. Again, all of the worrying people had over this situation was not for nothing. There have been multiple instances where we have been hit with the realization that these products we purchased aren't really ours, even if we could physically place them in our hands. While most physical games are on the disc itself with no extra download needed, some are more reliant on an internet connection. When Telltale Games went bankrupt, a bunch of their titles were delisted on online stores. Their games were episodic, and thus those chapters would be released every month or so after launch. So what happened here was that a game such as Minecraft Story Mode got digitally delisted. Unfortunate, but what if you had the physical disc for it? You would think you'd still be able to play it, right? Well, you can't. Partially. The disc itself does not contain the full game, only the first episode it launched with. You would not be able to play the full game because the other episodes were delisted and no longer able to be downloaded. It is during times like this that I remember the comforting words of Philippe Tremblay, director of subscriptions over at Ubisoft. One of the things we saw is that gamers are used to, a little bit like DVD, having and owning their games. That's the consumer shift that needs to happen. They got comfortable not owning their CD collection or DVD collection. That's a transformation that's a bit slower to happen in games. As gamers grow comfortable in that aspect, you don't lose your progress. If you resume your game at another time, your progress file is still there. That's not been deleted. You don't lose what you built in the game or your engagement with the game. So it's about feeling comfortable with not owning your game. You know, he's got a point. I didn't think about it that way. I wanted to play Just Dance when I should have instead simply been comfortable not playing it. By all means, these companies want to make the shift to digital as quickly as possible for a few reasons. First, it's a lot cheaper and less of a hassle to have an instant download available as opposed to the production and distribution of physical discs and boxes. I mean, they're already doing the bare minimum when it comes to this. Compare that with how cool these used to be back in the day. Real ones remember that feeling as a kid reading over the game's manual on the drive back home. Secondly, it's about control. All of what they sell you, all in one place, forcing you to rely on them. And with great power comes great implications. When the not-so-hit game Concord was delisted and refunded, Sony would then delete the game itself from people's consoles. When it launched, Concord was not well received, and since it was a live service title that shut down, there was pretty much nothing you could do on it. With that being said, this decision to completely remove it from consoles is concerning. It doesn't matter how the game was rated or what limitations it now had. It's about the principle of the thing that a company has that kind of power over your device. There was a somewhat similar incident a year prior to this, where allegedly someone was banned from EA's Apex Legends over text chat abuse. Now, what could this gamer have possibly sent to elicit such a strong response? What heinous string of characters did they maliciously put together here? Dear viewer, I have to warn you, what I am about to say is not for the faint of heart and might just get me permanently banned off of this very platform. But I will say it nonetheless. What this player typed in the chat was STFU. Lowercase. EA, though, did not stop there because this ban went even further. You can no longer play EA games on this account. That's right, their whole entire account got banned, including their access to other games they paid for. Now, there are those who were hesitant to believe this since the story didn't entirely add up at first glance. Usually, there's a multiple strike policy before something like this happens. According to the player, they previously had an account suspension for doing the same thing, albeit misspelled. But they claim to have never used cheats or to have done anything more compromising than swearing. Others would even jump in to defend this player, saying they've had similar experiences being temporarily banned from the game for a number of seemingly low-scale reasons. Whatever the truth may be here, no matter what this player has done, the question still has to be asked. Why? A mute punishment or a game ban is understandable if someone consistently breaks the code of conduct. However, even then, why ban their access to the entire library that they paid for, including access to single-player games? Again, it's about the principle of the thing. Companies should not be able to revoke your access to what you have purchased. Full stop. And this does not end at video games. In December of 2023, Sony posted a legal update notice informing users that they will no longer be able to watch any purchased Discovery content. Those movies won't just be unlisted, but will now also be entirely removed from people's libraries. This is without any mention of any compensation for the money spent on these films. Insane! More than 1,200 titles would have been wiped from both the platform and private libraries. Thankfully, the two parties here were able to reach a licensing agreement before the end of the month, and that prevented this whole thing from happening. Unfortunately, the same could not have been said for customers in Germany and Austria, because in August of 2022, Sony removed over 300 films from their store, and yes, also from the customers that paid for those films. I really wish I could say this is just a Sony problem, but the reality is that this can be the case with any digital library. Just look at what happened when Funimation was shut down and bought out by Crunchyroll. People lost access to all the media they had on there. Media that was boldly claimed to be available forever. And if an affected user wanted to transfer their account, they'd be going from paying $54.95 every year with Funimation to $99.99 a year with Crunchyroll. Just like that. In 2020, when Amazon was sued over media potentially being revoked from Prime Video customers, Amazon asked for the suit to be dismissed. They argued that they believed it was clear that purchases were for an on-demand viewing over an indefinite period of time. Because that was in the site's terms and conditions, the suit didn't go anywhere and was ultimately thrown out. Of course, current laws in general have not caught up to protect consumers enough as we head towards a more digital age. No, they are truly progressing at a snail's pace. But imagine if some form of legislation would make it past the initial tables and be formally put up in writing saying that yes, you own what you purchase. Remember how Microsoft got publicly eviscerated when they tried to explicitly control how people use their games? Other companies took notice. That's why no one wants to be the first to argue in a court or in Congress or in any high-profile public capacity over the specifics of their terms of service regarding digital goods. They would get absolutely raked over the coals by the public, tanking any goodwill they had. That's why, to avoid this PR nightmare, they have all implemented their ambitions of a digital-only world slowly. A frog in boiling water type of situation is what they wish for, where, before we know it, digital is pretty much our only option, and at that point, it's what we've gotten used to. But there have been some solid steps taken to combat this. In 2025, California Law AB 2426 went into effect, which forced companies to be more transparent about what they're selling. On their online stores, they were no longer allowed to use language such as buy, purchase, or anything else that makes someone think that they own that purchase. If they were to do so, they could be fined and even be opened up for litigation, which is exactly what happened to Amazon because they were once again sued over the language they use on Prime Video. I haven't even really touched on the preservation angle of all of this. There are shows and films out there where it is impossible to legally access them, all because it saves corporations more money to delist them for a tax write-off. With regards to video games, similar to Concord, Ubisoft's The Crew was also shut down and forcibly removed from people's Ubisoft Connect library. Even though it was a shut down online multiplayer game, this action made it so that dedicated players could no longer run their own private server for it. They were robbed of that option for a game they already paid for. This was the instance that kicked off Stop Killing Games, a consumer protection movement aimed at preserving games for both ourselves and future generations. This has garnered a lot of support from both gamers and developers themselves, but you know who's not a fan? The companies. I wonder why. People really care about this kind of stuff. I'm sure that seeing an image such as this elicits a reaction out of you. Despite how common digital stores are now, people still want physical media. That's why DVD and Blu-ray sales have actually been picking up in recent years. It really is a great feeling to have what you own in your hands, for you to do what you wish with it at any time. It's also not just film and TV making a comeback this way, so has music. I myself have a growing record collection. Just recently, I sold a rare collector's box set that I didn't really care for anymore, and I got a pretty penny for it. That's something I could only really do because it was something physical. By the way, the super rare Life is Strange record has been my white whale for over a decade now, so if anyone could help me out here with this, please. But it's media like this that's most important in times you really need it. We see this after natural disasters force people offline. In 2025, after Hurricane Helene ravaged the Carolinas and took out internet access for many, people flocked to stores to purchase physical media. In 2018, after Hurricane Michael went through Florida and cut power for 4 weeks, a woman became a pillar of her community because of her extensive DVD collection, to the point where her neighbors were trading water and food for access to her library. This speaks to another aspect that I'd like to touch on, the human element. There are connections made in physical spaces where you're surrounded by physical media. If you go to a local video game store, I promise you there will be people in there that want to talk to you about video games. Not over text, not over comments, not in threads, in person. In an age where we're so distant from each other, it's places like these that are untapped community hubs of like-minded neighbors. I implore you to look around and see what's out there near you. Thankfully, it's for all these reasons that we won't take this fight laying down, and these companies know that. We have to continue being vocal for what we believe in, for what we want this consumer landscape to be like. Not just for us, but for the generations ahead. Thank you so much for watching. And if you have a physical media collection, we would love to see it in our community Discord. The link to join is right below. Looking forward to seeing you over there.